Is called to order. I'm here with Alderman Arnett. I don't expect Alderman Pfeiffer today. He warned me he was out of town today. We've got a few things on the agenda. We'll start with approval of the minutes.
Move approval of the minutes.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? And we'll move right into general discussion. And Dr. Nash, you're up. Thank you for coming back. So I looked in the materials that we have attached, and it looked like everything that we had seen the first time, plus some of the materials that Mr. Walker presented. I didn't see any changes. Did I miss anything?
No, I didn't know how it was decided to put those things on the agenda.
I think Ms. Gaines was just doing her best to interpret and read between the lines. I don't think I was so clear.
Oh, okay.
But
Yes, I don't have any updated material, really just a brief update of what we've been doing since the last meeting. And
but before you start, isn't this the one that was to be amended to include the Eastport corridor?
right, so that was one thing we did, which was officially amend our scope to add Eastport. And we've gotten a revised bid from our consultant. And so we're going forward now with that. We're going to do two levels of analysis. One, after talking to all of you and Planning Commission and Alderwoman Pindell-Charles, I think people want to see the traffic model itself to be beyond the city limits, to include county, part of Bay Ridge that goes down to the county. And then Alderwoman Pindell-Charles said, well, if you're going to include that area, you should include the area of Forest Drive that goes between Solomons and Riva Road. So we're going to do kind of an analysis on that scale for the traffic. And that will very easily help us move into doing a citywide traffic model, because that's half the city. So then when we look at more in depth, we'll focus in more on city limits and Eastport, particular corridors, more Forest Drive and Bay Ridge, so we can do some more detailed analysis on those parts of the study area.
Yes, so I think you answered in part, but as you're aware, in a different arena, there are some questions about how the traffic studies are done. That's based on what was called for in the comprehensive plan. Will this allow us to do traffic studies in a different way, the way that was called for in the comp plan, which I won't claim to profess, being Greg Walker or others, and understand that fully, but...
Right. Well, I 100% agree that our traffic impact studies guidelines are too auto-centric. They focus too much on the impact of the automobile and are geared too much toward mitigating those particular impacts. They don't focus at all on other modes of transportation, biking, walking, transit, and how those modes would be impacted by the development. And so I think we do need to look at those modes very carefully and include those in our analysis. I mean, the consequence, the trade-off of that is that we focus less on the impact of the automobile. Now, I don't think that's going to be particularly popular, but that is what the comp plan calls for, and we would like to move forward in that direction if we have support to do that.
Well, okay, I hear that, and I actually applaud that. But I also thought that part of the critique from Mr. Walker, who largely supplied the information to go into the materials from the Concerned Citizens Group from Eastport, was that you can't just look at a narrow area. You have to look at the impacts of traffic on Forest Drive or nuisance flooding downtown when you're looking at the traffic. So it was a more global thing, which is in fact what I've understood Pete to say, Director Gutwald to say, is that he really wants to have this global traffic model. Mm-hmm. So you tweak it here and it ripples to everywhere. And
right, I agree. That still, though, is pretty auto-centric. So we have to kind of balance the concerns that people have that we're not taking everything into account, talking about vehicular traffic, with the goals in the comp plan, which are we need to stop emphasizing the importance of automobiles so much. We need to focus and promote these other modes of transportation.
Yeah, I know no
So-
one was thinking about that yesterday.
Right, I saw a lot of pedestrians yesterday, yeah. So, you know, that's something we'll have to work through, because I think that when people read that section of the comp plan, they don't always, well, I don't know what they think, but I've heard people say, almost like, we need to make our traffic impact study guidelines more restrictive for vehicles. So we would lower or raise the level of service at intersections that are required. We would reduce the number of trips, well, which we've done. You know, those things go towards the impact of automobiles. But the comp plan is talking about is, no, we're moving away from automobiles. We're moving to the next
Really?
20 years. We're talking about what are we going to have, you know,
Right.
we're yeah. Well, the future of transportation is, the next 20 years of transportation is going to be amazing paradigm shift. And so, you know, I think this study and the next comp plan are really going to start addressing how we're going to prepare ourselves for that paradigm shift. And we're not going to need parking garages anymore. You know, we're going to need carpool lanes where our little robot cars can drop us off, but we're not going to need places where we can store our personal vehicles, because we're not going to have personal vehicles.
Let us hope. Thank you.
So you were starting to say what changes, what updates you have since the last meeting?
Oh, right. Okay. So we've amended the scope. We've gone to the Planning Commission, and I did a brief update similar to what I gave to you at the last Environmental Matters meeting. And what we decided to do is to meet on June 1st, the next Planning Commission meeting, have a work session. So it will be not a formal public hearing. We'll sit around the table, and we will treat them as sort of a hybrid between our first public meeting and our first stakeholder meeting. So we'll be giving them a survey about Forest Drive and the whole study area. You know, what are strengths, weaknesses, what do you see the future of this corridor? And then we will also ask them
I'm sorry,
about.
I've got to interrupt you because I'm just losing context. You said this is with the Planning Commission?
Yes,
Okay, so this is an upcoming meeting. This is the early June meeting?
June 1st at 7 p.m.
Okay, and it's to treat them as stakeholders for their input?
Right. And
Haven't we jumped the gun then before, that seems like a step that we're not ready for, since I thought we were going to go back and ask the Planning Commission for input on sketching out the objectives and sketching out, when we go have stakeholder meetings, what are we going to be asking people to be commenting on, so that they know what input you're open to
Right.
receiving. And so
yes, well, I'm thinking all of the above. We're going to say, you know, we're going to fully flesh out our scope. We're going to say, what do you want to see in the scope? What do you want to see us, what do you want us to ask people? Who do you want us to ask these questions of? And then we're going to say, you know, what would you say if we asked you that question? And then we're going to, you know, give them an opportunity to both give input into the study and the scope itself, and to the study topic.
all right, I'm just a little concerned. It sounds like it's more focused on getting their input on answering the questions, when I think the focus really needs to be what are the questions to be asked. You know, I'm still waiting to see answers, frankly, from a month ago on what are the deliverables you're expecting from the various partners. We have PALS, we have the FO group. I'm waiting to see the Planning Commission brought in on sketching out what those deliverables should be, by whom, by when, sketching out what, again, like I said about the public input, I think it's really unclear when we say, okay, here's what we have, what do you want to say about it? I think you get lots of answers because we haven't said, here are the questions we're asking you, here's what the input. If you start talking about downtown traffic, that's beyond the scope here, or whatever other limitations you have. And I don't know what they should be, but I thought that's what we were going to say the Planning Commission was going to help flesh out. I felt very frustrated after the last meeting because I felt like Planning Commission and Planning and Zoning were talking around each other.
Mhm.
Where planning and zoning was articulating that we haven't started yet, so stop telling us to go back because we haven't done it, we're open-minded. And I'm here from planning commission saying, yeah, you did. You laid out, you got PALs doing X, Y, Z. Now you've got an RFP that FO group was eventually pointed on, and they want to go back to the beginning of those points to revisit whether we were asking PALs for the right stuff and
Right.
FO group for the right stuff.
So when I went to planning commission, 2 or 3 weeks ago, that's what I presented with. I said, this is what we heard from you at Environmental Matters. This is what we heard from two of your members. We heard that you felt left out of the process. We heard that you want to be involved, crafting the process. How are we going to do that?
Vic, could I trouble you to close that door, please? Mr. Pasco, thank you.
So basically, I went to apologize and say, how do you want to do this?
Okay.
And so that's how we came up with the idea for June 1st, let's do this. It was felt like we needed some kind of baseline to help us formulate the discussion topics. And so the survey is kind of a discussion tool. And it was their idea to bring them the survey and to treat them like a public.
A test group.
Yeah, a test group. So I'm going to, try to work with them and see what process are they comfortable with? How do they want to proceed at each step? And I'm happy to do what they want, and that's what they asked for at that meeting.
And in full disclosure, Bill Harold shut down while you started talking, so you might not have seen that he came in, but Bill's behind you.
Oh, okay, so he can shake his head or nod in agreement, but I believe I am accurately reporting on our discussion. So. Is he making faces back there?
No, I just, like I said, I didn't want you.
Like this.
I
just didn't want you to be surprised.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's all. So I might be going a little out of order, but I read the monthly manager's report that Tom distributed, or the link to, and if I recall correctly, I think it said that this project would be done by February 2018.
February 2018.
I didn't think that was plausible since the materials say that we're going to have discussion and input through spring of 2018.
Right.
And,
I don't know. That was in the manager's.
Yes.
I don't know how. I'll have to check that. I might have. I don't know what that was.
Okay.
I don't remember putting that in there, but I'll have to go back and check.
Okay. We had so we asked for clarity on what the Planning Commission's role was. Greg Walker submitted to, I guess, Ashley. I'm not sure if I wasn't actually involved in the transmission of information from him to her, but I don't see anything new from Ashley since then. So I guess, are we in agreement on what the Planning Commission's role is in this process?
That for me or
Yes.
for Bill?
Yes, for you, Dr. Nash.
I think we are.
Okay.
Yes.
Will the planning commission meeting be a public hearing, or is it a work session?
Work session. Again,
So
their
public
request.
cannot
We
speak.
said,
Okay.
they said, should this be open to the public? I said, what do you want? They said, no, we want a chance to say our piece.
I'm just curious. Mr. Harold is raising his hand.
Mr. Elf, you need a mic. You need a mic and an introduction. You can sit down at the table if you prefer. Yeah, just make sure the mic's on. Start with your name and address, and then dive in.
Thank you. I'm Bill Harold. I reside at 18 Spindrift Way in the city of Annapolis. The reason we asked for a work session was that we wanted to work, and we thought that we wanted to get back to sort of level ground and understand, what were the questions to be asked, how would we go forward. We thought that there would be at least my thinking, I don't speak for the commission, I speak just for myself, but my thinking was that from that point forward, we would then be able to engage the public in a way that we understood, that the administration understood, and so forth. So it really wasn't an attempt to exclude people, even though it is exclusionary to that extent. It was really so that we could just focus on getting our heads around what it is that needs to be done. So that was the thinking behind work session.
Dr. Nash, is the thinking that, and feel free to say where you are, Bill, Mr. Harold. Dr. Nash, is the thinking that after that meeting that planning and zoning will visit, if necessary, the scope of work with the PALS group and the FO group?
Not so much with PALS, but with the Fox group, yes.
Oh, it's Fox? I thought it was FAUX.
It is.
It is.
Okay.
Yes.
It's FAUX and it's Fox.
Fox.
All right. They might want to rethink their marketing.
French, it's the French pronunciation of foe.
Okay. Nice. Right. All right. Well, I'm pleased to hear that progress. Thank you for that update and that information, and for having those conversations. Certainly there was no impression that there was anything intentional to exclude anybody, but it just felt like it was starting to get where we were getting some discomfort. And I want to emphasize, I think we need to be clear on what this is not going to do, because I have big expectations for the study, but it's not going to be the end-all, be-all to all answers. And so I think we need to just be real clear on what we anticipate, what this can accomplish, best case scenario. It'll have limitations, and so we need to express what those limitations are. So I just would like to emphasize that. Scope, okay. Hopefully it'll be fleshed out after that June Planning Commission meeting, but I'd like to see in paper who's doing what by when. So as far as spelling out deliverables by the Fox group or anybody else, by the Planning Commission, by Planning and Zoning. And I think it's best for the people who are going to be held accountable to spell out that report, so then when they're held accountable to it, they have, it's not about blaming, but it's about just getting good information as expected. Previous to last meeting, I had laid out a number of questions. Dr. Nash, I would be happy to repeat them if you'd like, but do you still have that list? Because I think I haven't gotten answers to a lot of those questions.
I think I still have it in my email, yes.
Okay. Would it be helpful for me to review them, or you have it?
I have them. I don't have the answers to them.
Okay.
I have them.
Just sometimes just confirming that you've got the questions is good, but just let you know that I'll still be looking for those answers. So that's good progress. I don't know that we could do anything else further today on this matter, and so maybe that's it.
Could I make a small comment?
Of course.
I should preface it by saying my capacity for outrage has been severely exhausted by the national political scene, so I come here not to be outraged. But we did have a short presentation from Sally at our last meeting, and basically we set a date to really dig in and try to get into it, so I think that's progress. I don't know any more about it now than I knew at your last meeting, but we see that there's some hope of learning more in the future, which I think is great. I'm very troubled by what I've heard, however, and this is where the outrage comment comes in, about things that were left out of the materials posted on the city's website, and then the attempt to get access to those documents, public documents, and then that in turn led to a Freedom of Information Act request, which has apparently been stonewalled. So that concerns me, and that's
If I could clarify, so the PALS report was initially so many pages, and then the version that was made public was a shortened version of that. Are we talking about the same thing?
Yes,
Okay.
and again, I'm operating under hearsay, so I can't say
My
one way or
understanding was
another, but
The last 2 pages were cut off, and that had to do with traffic in particular. Can you speak?
All right. So, the only thing for Forest Drive sector study that's been posted is that presentation, the PowerPoint presentation, because I have not had a chance to do the webpage yet. No one asked me for any information. I received a Information Act request from Anastasia Hopkinson on behalf of the Annapolis Neck Peninsula Federation pretty much 2 days after the meeting where we went to tell them about this project. And so I sent all my documents to the city attorney, who in turn turned over all of the documents, excluding draft documents and documents she felt were privileged.
What was the last word?
draft documents and privileged
Oh, privileged,
documents. Then Anastasia Hopkinson wrote back and said, we are specifically looking for this PAL study. So I said to Ashley, I sent her a draft. I said, now I have another draft. You can I'd rather you don't send any of them because they're draft and we haven't really blessed them. But if you have to and it'll avoid this, go ahead. So she did release both of those drafts, the newer draft and the older draft. There's no pages missing, so I don't know what that is about, but it does show traffic. It shows 2012, based on 2012 numbers. Then what he did is he took a land use model and he analyzed what would occur if we built to zoning max out. So if we built the properties to the extent we could under current zoning, if they were developed to that extent now, what would the traffic be like? And it's all level of service F, because, you know, it's maximum build out. The point is, we can't build to maximum zoning build out even under our current zoning code, because the roads would shut. If we did that tomorrow, our roads would shut down. So basically that was his point of the study.
Is that the part of the study that was left out?
Nothing was left out.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're saying is left out, but
Let's see if I can get my notes on it.
it's pretty much I mean, there should be two drafts. They should have access to at least two drafts of the same thing. The study
think-
by Derek Lombardi, they should be pretty much the same. I don't
I
think
think
he
even,
changed
I was
them.
told that even the draft that we got, Environmental Matters got, which was 29 pages, I believe, was still missing these 2 pages on traffic.
Was it a PowerPoint or I don't know.
And I keep on,
As far as I know, nothing is missing. I don't know what they're saying is missing.
since I don't have the pages that are missing,
Okay.
it's hard for me to say what.
I mean, I have honestly now turned over everything in my possession to Ashley, to the city attorney. The city attorney has released, I think, everything except for like one email that was between her and staff, which is privileged.
Right.
But she even listed on the response to Anastasia what she hadn't sent.
All right,
So,
so
I mean-
as far as you're aware, the complete PAL's presentation was presented to council committee, and it was forwarded to Ashley. And
Oh, I do know, okay, on the PowerPoint, but I don't think this is what they would be talking about. But, okay, the PowerPoint that is posted, when we went to the Annapolis Neck Peninsula Federation, they were interested in knowing about the nursing home that is going in behind the CVS on Bay Ridge. So we included 2 slides about showing the site plan of the nursing home. So I took that out for the presentation I put online, but I don't know that they would want to see that. So
I don't know. I don't know why.
I can
Where-
post the original if that's what, but I can't, I just didn't think anyone would be interested in that. But I'll post it if that's what it is, but I don't think it has anything to do with traffic, so. I
I
don't
wish
know.
I could be more helpful.
I'm
but-
sure Anastasia can get in touch with me. I don't know why she didn't do that in the first place, but
It sounded like she tried to get in touch with somebody and then went the
No.
MPIA route as a second choice.
she
but-
never got in touch with me before.
All right. So just well, I won't list, but I have like 10, 15 questions or so from last time. So just, simple, some of them are simple, like using clear language, like explain the nodes, examine the nodes, for instance, was in the slides. And I don't know what that means. I would imagine most people don't know. And I'm sure you could explain it to me in language I would understand, but I would just caution you to use language that lay people can digest.
All right.
And there's other things in that list. So since you said you don't have answers yet, I will not ask for them. But you know that they're still outstanding. Anything else, Ross?
No, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Nash. Thank you, Mr. Harold. Anyone else? Mr. Pasco, I don't know what matter you're here for, so it's not this one. Okay.
He's
Thank
here
you.
to pay my bail.
All right. Yeah, you're gonna need it. Thank you, folks. I don't think we have anything else for planning? Dr. Nash, are you here for either the one-year update on transition from DNEP, which I imagine is Director Broadbent, sea level rise, update from Environmental Commission, or update on forest conservation projects? Okay.
Should we take that next?
Yeah, would you like to take that next? Is that okay, Dr. Director Broadbent?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. They're here for you.
What? All right. I apologize. I don't know. How do you normally do these updates? What do you want me to just go through what's new?
Well,
or?
what would be helpful, and what we often try to do, is just trying to figure out what's different than last time.
Okay.
And specifically to forest conservation pieces. So if there's been new projects filed that you're evaluating, anything being denied, just trying to keep tabs on changes to the forest conservation projects.
Okay. So I've added a new column, which is last action, and so if it's red or bold, you can see has been added or updated since the last report.
I don't see a column labeled last action. I do see things in red.
Okay.
Is it actually a column called last
I
action?
have added it, but I think I had a user error when I uploaded this April one. But I will make sure the March one, you can see that column. So it will have a date that tells you when it was last updated.
Okay.
And if you could make the print smaller.
You can zoom in on your computer, Ross. That's
Yes.
a thing.
Yes, we can.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
do that, right? Just go like this with your fingers.
No, it's one off the page.
there are no new updates for forest conservation. There are no new updates for forest conservation since last month. So we
What about
haven't.
since the month before? Because I don't think we had time for this last month.
Oh, okay. Let's see. 39 Hudson Street, the forest stand delineation was approved, and the FCP is under review.
Okay. Which project is this?
That's
Okay.
absolute fire protection.
Okay.
It's a warehouse and an office,
Okay.
15,000 square feet.
Is it new construction or redevelopment?
New construction.
Are they going to
None-
have? Do they have any environmental features there to be
um,
concerned about?
They have some not so great trees. Is that the case? Maria went out there recently, so she can.
Actually, that property has, it's mostly environmental features. It has quite a ravine on it,
Okay.
and there's a stream down at the bottom. So if you drive down Hudson Street, like
Mhm.
past the lighthouse shelter, this is like all the way at the end. But if you down in that ravine, that's sort of between the where the old Capitol newspaper site was and
Right.
where this is, it's really steep, and there's a stream down there, and the good part is that the applicant did spend some time with folks from the Environment Commission and is willing to do some enhancement to the environmental features beyond what the code requires. So it looks like, there's some possibility of actually getting some restoration work done on that property, as well as the construction and design, which is hopeful.
I'm looking at a
This
map
was
of it.
This was an annexation. This
Okay.
might, city clerk can probably help me with this, but this might have been the last annexation that we did. 39 Hudson.
There was
Okay.
a Hudson annexation that we didn't go forward with.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's the one I'm thinking of.
Oh,
But this is down
This
at
is
the
not that one.
end also. So it does have a stream. It's right off the property and some steep slopes. It would unfortunately have to have kind of a long driveway to get in there, but that might be hard to avoid. But the applicant has been very willing to talk to folks about the environmental concerns on the property and perhaps do some restoration work as part of the construction, which is kind of a bonus since it's beyond what would be required.
Okay. That's great. Just pulling up to see, trying to see it on a map. And yeah, the map just shows me lots of trees. Doesn't show me I guess I do see a little ravine there. And there's a creek in that ravine. Yeah, that makes sense.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like a lot of trees.
There are a lot of trees on that property, actually. Some of them are, well, they're trees.
Okay.
You know,
Okay. Dr. Nash, the
Not to say anything disparaging about those.
right,
Sorry,
nothing
Ron.
disparaging about the trees.
would the projects at 1415 Forest Drive and 1503 Forest Drive, are they really the same project, two projects, one project over two parcels? Or are they
No,
truly two separate projects?
They're separate projects.
Two separate, you said?
Two separate, yes.
Okay. All right, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. What else, what other updates?
That's all right. Next is Bywater Park. It's sort of a new project. They got their grading permit approved. They did have a four-stand delineation that was previously approved as part of the Kingport Plan Development. So, because when Kingport was planned, they were always going to put this park in. They just didn't do it for several years. So now they're finally moving forward with that. Or I guess we're putting in the park, is that right? Yes, we're putting the park in.
That's a program open space enhancement project.
Okay.
Central Park, the Forest Conservation Plan is...
Which one, I'm sorry?
Central Park, it's
Okay.
a development off Elliott Road.
Mm-hmm.
It is in a closed school district. They had a work session with Planning Commission in May.
And these are 45 new homes, townhomes?
That's right.
A lot of development. Where is Elliott Road?
It's near, like Truxton Park, tucked back in there.
Mm.
There's currently 10 homes back there, 10 single-family homes owned by the Pastranas.
Okay.
And so they're proposing to demolish those and build these townhomes.
Okay, anything else?
That is it as far as forest conservation goes.
Was has the grading permit been issued for Parkside Preserve? It says under review here.
I know they were close. I don't know if it was approved after April 27th or not.
If you'll, yeah, just if you could let us know. I don't think it changes anything, but it's certainly a project we've been keeping an eye on.
Sure.
For Primrose Hill, I know I've got a slew of emails from Tracy McGranigan, I'm not sure if I'm saying her name correctly, and Matt Waters in response about problems with the Primrose Hill project and trees that Ms. McGranigan says are coming down as a result. Can either of you tell me what I need to know so I can respond intelligently to Ms. McGranigan?
What was her concern, that trees were being removed?
That trees are falling down as a result. I believe the issue is that she's saying because of this project and they're not following what they're supposed to, or they're following but what they're doing isn't working. There's lots more stormwater coming off site, and it's causing erosion and trees to fall as a result.
I'll look into that.
Thank you.
I'll look into that. I know many of the sites had some real sediment challenges. The sediment control practices can't really hold beyond an inch, and when we got these storms that went beyond an inch, they just couldn't hold it. But if it's something that's affecting tree save and all that, let me look into that. I'm
Okay. I've
filling
gotten,
that role these
could be a
days.
dozen emails this week from, if not more, between those two people, Tracy and Matt. Is Matt under you or under you?
Matt is under Public Works.
Okay. Need it,
Matt
okay.
that does stormwater, so he
Yeah.
is probably not necessarily the tree guy, but let me have a
Okay.
look. I know that was,
Thanks.
Frank Biva and I had reviewed the trees on that.
Yeah, that's my recollection. If I recall correctly, I think he said something to the effect of that they were in violation and citations needed to be issued. And that separately, I think, if I recall correctly, if I understood it correctly, they were following the engineering plans, but the engineering plans have proven to be ineffective for the stormwater management.
Let me see exactly what it is. It could be that the rain was beyond
Yes,
what the futures could hold.
right.
I know that site, the last big rain was one of the ones that didn't work that crazy rainy day.
Right.
Which was a good thing, so they didn't track the mud on the road, whereas, one of the other sites
Okay.
decided to work in the mud.
Thank-
And
Thank you for your...
lots of $1,000 fines were issued for that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for your anticipated further responses so I can respond to Ms. McGren again. Okay. You said that was all right,
That's right.
Dr. Nash? Okay. All right. Thank you for
Thank
the update. Austin, anything?
No, I think it's good, thank you. It's always helpful to get caught up on that.
Yeah. We've come a long way from the beginning to, when I started 4 or 5 years ago to now, and Ms. Broadbent, Director Broadbent, you got us a lot of the way, and Dr. Nash, I appreciate the continued updates.
And actually, doesn't Frank get credit for developing this spreadsheet?
Actually, Frank's was in a different format,
Yeah.
which
Right.
was more in prose, so
Yep, thank you.
that one seems like it's easier to keep current than
Right.
the one that Frank was writing all kinds of explanations and things,
I
but
designed it originally for traffic impact studies, so I could keep track of what was going on. Then I added MPDUs,
Oh,
then
okay.
I added APF schools, then I added forest conservation, then I added a few other things. So if you get my, I keep adding more columns. That's why the font is so little.
So it could be all things to all people.
Right,
Right.
well, thank you.
Thanks again, Dr. Nash.
Yeah, thank you.
Maria, wherever you'd like to sit. You can Oh, okay, good point. It should be. There. Oh. Okay.
good afternoon, Maria Broadbent, Director, Office of Environmental Policy. Unless you had something specific, I was just going to sort of give you an overview of
1917. We're starting on 1917, right?
Sea level rise?
No, 1 year update.
one year update, and in that I'm going to include a little discussion about sea level rise and
Okay.
how
I'm just
that-
trying to help our city clerk because she's got to put in the points about what we're talking about.
So I'll wave when I start talking about sea level rise,
Very
maybe.
good.
Okay. So our 1 year would basically be in July. I've been in roles several times where I was asked to be a coordinator of things that were across.
What was the last word you said?
But I've been enrolled several times in different places where I've been asked to be a coordinator of things that go across different departments.
Mm-hmm.
And there's really great purpose for that. One of the aldermen, sometimes I hear maybe complaining about silo effects of some things. I'm not sure if you know who this is. But this is one of the ways that you can break that down. So there are many things that we do that have elements that cross different departments. And if they aren't, they should be environmental. So there are many things that we do where we don't sort of check in for the environmental issues, and the creation of this position more than anything gives that opportunity. So right now I'm putting a lot of my emphasis on stormwater management because of how important that is and where we are in a regulatory stance. And it serves a purpose there to be able to not only make sure that, different departments have a seat at the table and a place to check in, but also serves so that the community doesn't have to go from department to department and person to person. We had a nice meeting last night with the folks about the St. Luke's project, and if folks have questions about projects like that, it's good for them not to have to shop around for an answer. So that is also one of the things that's important for that office. So stormwater management is where I'm spending a lot of my effort right now. But there are some areas that, as we sort of grow our reputation and our comfort level with the departments and with everyone else, honestly, some of the things that we look at for long-term planning should probably be looked at a little more closely for environmental issues. When the comprehensive plan was done, about when I first started, whenever that was, 2008, 2009, we were asked to look at a little of this and that. But now I think the world has changed, and things environmental are elevated to a higher level because they have more impacts, and I want to make sure that all of the things that we do that have to do with some of those long-range plans, that we really are intentionally looking at them for environmental things. So I'm working a lot on stormwater management. We're working a lot on grants, which actually, is something that I could keep someone busy full-time just doing grants, because it is something you could be doing grants for nonstop for 20 years of your life, and you still have them ready at the 11th hour, because that's just how grants go, and they're tedious, and you do just as much work to get $1,000 as you do to get $1 million, or to not get the grant at all. So where we get going on things, we sometimes derail ourselves looking for grants. I'm also working right now to bring the Conservancy Board into the 21st century. I have an intern this summer, and I got a grant so I can bring all of that work into a digital format. I have a really great board, and I would love to bring them to talk to you sometime so we can talk to you about some things that they have on the horizon.
Happy to. Let us know when you would like to do that.
Let me ask the chair and see what their comfort level is. We're at the point now where we are just about ready to actually go out and start seeking easements. So rather than just the easements being created as a result of development, actually soliciting easements from people and looking to preserve some of the little special places, that could be shoreline properties in Eastport, or they could be, the wooded lot that nobody's ever going to build on. So
I keep on mentioning the lot at Spine Hilltop, because it's got a hill and it's a slender but long couple of acres. That would probably be a perfect lot. Difficult to build on, so it'd be a perfect lot to add some trees on and be an easement for somebody to offset taking down trees elsewhere.
So Spa and...
Across from the temple.
Okay. I'll look. Yeah, I'll look. I know which property you're talking about.
It's been vacant for a long time.
Yeah, the temple contacted me once several years ago, wanted to know the feasibility of building some townhouses, and I'm not sure where they landed with that discussion following that with planning and zoning. So those are some of the things I'm working on, the tree canopy issues, and really, I don't want to use the term environmental justice because sometimes it makes people uncomfortable. But we do need to look at how we've done what we do and where we've done it.
To make me uncomfortable, I started working on that issue in 1992 for the Maryland Department of the Environment as an intern.
So if I look at the neighborhood where I spend my city efforts on maintaining a city-owned tree canopy, there are some holes in that.
Yep.
And I want to do my best to get some trees in there, if people want them. Parole is one, Victor Haven is another one.
Alderman Arnett?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two questions. First of all, I haven't been paying close attention for a while. Could you tick off a few of the names of the people on the Conservancy Board?
Karen Jennings is the chair.
Karen Jennings was chair for quite some time, and she should be commended
She's
for
not here,
holding
though.
it together. Joanna Ogburn is the chair now. Joanna has a long-term background in working in land conservancy.
That's great.
Trudy
Is Karen
McFall,
still on the board?
she is. Yep, she is, and she has a lot to contribute because she's bringing me up to speed on, the why and what for sometimes. Meg House, there's a couple, but I'll send you the names
Okay.
of the
Yeah,
folks
just
there.
curious. I've kind of stopped tracking it once
Jay.
Jay Baldwin died. So the other thing, though, is a more serious question, which is the reason for asking about the update transferring from DNAP is I guess I'm worried about whether or not you feel you can be effective in this coordination across the departments. I am always a little uneasy when I see how Public Works does their planning, and it doesn't feel to me like they're always including thinking about these things as pretty much a straightforward engineering, here's the straightest, easiest way to go. And I think that can be, the same story could be told about other departments. So to the extent that you're comfortable, I'd certainly like to know how effective that is and how much more work we have to do to get that kind of attention and coordination to be successful.
Understood. And maybe I can use the work that I did in Newport as an example. In that role, I was asked to do environmental management system. So it's a cradle-to-grave environmental look at things across the city departments. I actually was in charge of the city's safety, occupational safety. We were the most expensive community in our insurance trust. And I was asked to be the city's ombudsman. So I was in charge of managing the complaints across the city. And it was a little squeamish at first. Folks were like, why are you in our stuff? But then when folks figured out that I was really there to advocate for them and to make sure that more people got to maybe chime in a little bit and look at other people's perspectives, everybody does better working together, and sometimes having dynamic teams where we can see other perspectives, as long as we don't get in our way too much, we can actually make things better. And it's going to take a little bit, and I'd love to tell Alderman Littman that everything is humming along and exactly like I told you it was going to be a year and a half ago. But I don't think it's in a bad place, and I can see where folks get really dug in because they have really great expertise. But sometimes if they can just relax it a little and look at things from the ecologist's point of view, we can get somewhere. So it's going to take a little bit. I did, lean on Mr. Andrews, the city manager, and told him, I do need him, and he has done a great job of it, to send the word out from him that the environment is to be considered in all of the things that we do, and provided a list of things. And I think that is helpful for me and for all of the departments too. So hopefully we are where I'm hoping to see us in another 6 months or so that it's a little more second nature. Yeah.
So let me be very specific. I sat in on a briefing that Sam Bryce did on the rebricking of Main Street. And I heard a number of things discussed, some of which I like very much, like stubbing out for the sprinkler systems and things like that, but I didn't hear any mention of stormwater management, and that's gotta be one of the biggest sluices right down to the water that we have. I'm not sure there are things we can do, but I would certainly like to, I certainly hope that we've thought about things that could be done there, and I mean, maybe there's catchment basins we could put in and let water pool there and slowly sink down, but I didn't hear a word about that.
Yeah, and I'm aware of that, and Director Gerald and I talked about it. We're gonna try out some technology on Main Street that is a
Good.
Stormwater Planter that is designed both to handle some water volume,
Right.
so quantity and quality, and it's a tree planter, so
That'd be nice.
yeah, it would be nice, and, you know, and what the director and I talked about is making sure that when we're looking at that project, that we look at what are the best types of inlets that we can use that might be more easily modified to this type of technology, so maybe we don't have the money right now, but if we are able to, because there's lots of, they call them G3 grants.
Right.
There are lots of green infrastructure grants out there that if you can capitalize on the money that you're spending to make the project more environmentally friendly, that we would have access to those. So he has said that he will make sure that they're looking at how the inlets are designed to make them better able to be, Silvacell is sort of the generic
Well,
name.
It's not my ward, but I don't.
But you were probably right, if it was a meeting where there were a bunch of people, I probably should have been there.
You know, that for sure, but also, I think we keep missing opportunities, and I think that is an opportunity area, and there's a lot of pooch outs, some of which have utilities underneath them, but it still seems to me that for a little bit of additional money, if you came to the council and finance committee in particular, we could budget for that and not only do the right thing, but possibly serve as an example for other areas to do the right thing as well. It is, it's ripe, it looks to me like, with opportunities to slow down some water and maybe clean it up.
And maybe cool it off.
Yeah, right.
And maybe cool it off. Main Street is a awfully hot place in the summertime with nearly any shade.
I have a couple of questions if you're,
Yeah, thank you.
two things. One, and let me say them both before you answer the first because I might forget. First is, you didn't mention energy efficiency in the topics that you were working on. So that's continues to be back in my mind to advocate for more solar, especially on city buildings and spaces, not necessarily buildings, but parking lots and et cetera. And the second thing is, you know, as we get into the budget issues on stormwater, could we stop calling it stormwater fee and call it water pollution control fee, something to that effect, something that's more accurate?
Watershed protection would be better?
I'm game
Yeah.
to that. Just
Yeah.
let's get stormwater out of there.
Watershed protection or watershed restoration and protection
Yeah.
would be better.
We call it watershed improvement protection.
Some-
If you whip
something
again.
with the word watershed
Yeah,
in it,
watershed restoration
Whip,
fee.
whip.
I like that.
yeah, is much better because, you know, wastewater,
Yeah,
that's a different kind of water.
yeah.
And certainly stormwater makes it sound an awful lot like rain.
So right,
Yeah.
exactly. So watershed restoration fee. Is that what you were happy with?
Anything with the word watershed in it, I'm happy about.
You like that,
'cause
Ross?
I do, yeah.
All right.
Right.
And is it currently called what it's currently called because it's in the code that way, or is it just what we refer to it?
It's
Yeah,
in the
it's
code
set up
that way.
In the code? Yeah. So we have to change it in the code?
Well, see, that's where it gets a little more complicated. There are legitimate stormwater things like the routine activities to fix the catchment
The
basins
collection
and things
system.
like that, which are ongoing maintenance things. And then there's the watershed improvement plan, which is over and above, and takes us beyond the routine to do more things to control the TMDLs.
Aren't all
Because
those aren't those things in the first category still watershed related?
Yes, they are, but you have to be very careful because there's sensitivity in the environmental community about it's all being done to do the routine things, although the storm restoration fee is being used to do routine things,
Right.
not do the additional things, so.
Well, we hope to have a lot more money to do the additional things.
I hope so, we'll see. That topic came up last night at St. Luke's, and it also came up this morning in a more negative tone at the Chamber of Commerce Economic Matters, where businesses are wanting to know why they have to pay so much.
Right. And I've heard Bob say that as well.
Yeah.
So how would we change the
We-
name of the fee?
Does it have to be legislative? An ordinance?
Well,
I just
what-
want to
what-
change the fee. I don't care about everything else. I just want to change the fee. That's not the stormwater management fee. I want it to be the, whatever Maria wants it to
Watershed
be.
restoration fee.
Watershed restoration fee.
That's the simplest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
I
that's a
think-
great idea.
I thought that there might be some legislative opportunities that were coming up related to the watershed improvement plan?
Well, I haven't looked at the agenda yet. Regina, is there a resolution to adopt the watershed improvement plan on the agenda?
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know
see,
that it's on this time, but,
Once again, a promise from the city manager not fulfilled, sorry.
I have honestly not looked at it either, but when that happens, maybe that would be the right time we could have all those conversations together at one time.
Well,
because
we need to, that would be a resolution to adopt the WIP. We would need legislation to change the name of the fee and every time it shows up. So it would be two different kinds of legislation.
And the current fee is called stormwater fee, or is there some more I'm missing?
Stormwater management fee, I
Stormwater
think.
management fee?
Right, and in some cases, we wouldn't want to change it because what we adopted was actually dictated by Maryland Department of the Environment or someone else. So the stormwater code does talk about stormwater. I
Well,
think what we want to say
I'm
is,
not trying to change all references
right,
to
we're
stormwater, just the fee.
creating a watershed protection program or improvement.
I'm not even trying to go that far. I'm just trying to talk about the fee itself.
Oh, the fee itself, yeah.
That's it. I'm not trying to change all references to stormwater, just the stormwater management fee shall heretofore be known as the watershed
Right.
restoration fee.
And actually, this is a very good idea, Mr. Chair, because Elvia Thompson has brought up a couple of times with the money from the capital improvement program, but also this change in the fees. She thinks that we would be smart to lockbox it, create a totally independent account, which could be called the watershed restoration fee account.
Right.
And all of those monies, both capital and fees and grants, would all be sequestered into that account.
Isn't that done by calling it an enterprise fee? Enterprise fund?
No, it would not be, well, it is an enterprise fund, isn't it?
Yeah, isn't it? I think it's already an enterprise
Yeah,
fund.
it is an enterprise fund.
So doesn't it already have those protections, in theory at least? In theory.
Yeah.
An enterprise fund is a full cost accounting, so an enterprise fund would also charge back to the fee things like all the staff's overhead
Yeah,
for the
right.
building and,
Right.
those kinds of things.
But I
And,
think it does that.
our share of the Office of Law and,
I think that was the big
That-
shift a couple of years ago when we went to program-based budgeting is,
that's right.
I'm not saying Bruce, but Bruce took a lot of the stormwater fee out for those admin costs, and that's why the amount left
Right.
for projects went down so much. So I think we're already treating it properly, we're now treating it as an enterprise fund and black box, as I understand that. I don't think we need to do anything additional to
Well,
do that.
We'll see.
I would certainly advocate for a name change.
Yeah, if, I think that's, next week we have one or two council work sessions to go over the budget, and I think this would be a topic that we'd want to raise.
I've been wanting to put up some signs to know when we're crossing from one watershed to another, but I've been wanting to have a better name to put on them, so it would certainly be timely for me.
Okay. So the energy issue, solar, any movement?
We have, and I just printed it out the other day, and in the last year or so, we issued quite a lot of those permits. We had been working with MEA, and the MEA, before the gubernatorial election, was working with us to create a portal that would make it easier for folks to apply for permits related to solar panels, so they could get their state grants and all of those issues at the same time they're applying for a permit. But that might have changed a little. I think MEA got just put in MDE, so they're a little less separate. We issued quite a few of them. I know Paul Murphy from the Environment Commission has been looking at putting a flyer together, so that I told him we would be happy to give that out with the pre-application materials for things where people come in. I would almost say, we're in the middle of the Honeywell work being done by Honeywell on energy efficiency. And maybe the next thing that we do after that is get one of because that work doesn't include any renewable energy. But I'm sure there are plenty of companies out there now that we could put out a bid and ask those companies to evaluate city-owned buildings for possibility of putting solar on them.
And what about on, I guess that answers that part. So I'm partly thinking just what can we do? We could legislate putting solar, but I know HPC has restrictions and David's got restrictions. It's tough.
Well, HPC's got restrictions. What would the other restrictions be?
HPC was things like you couldn't put solar on
Oh,
in the
yeah,
garage because it was
right.
a site view or a site plane or something. You could see them
Because you could see them. Yeah.
in the historic district.
Well,
But, to me that it's a great location for it because those cars get so hot anyway. You provide shade for the cars, and it's great space for solar panels.
well, to my mind, it might beg a discussion if your parking garage is in a historic structure. What view are we saving?
Right.
So, if it's a historic building,
You don't have to convince me.
maybe that makes sense. But if the structure is, like Hillman Garage,
Yeah.
not looking real historic to me, but
You don't have to convince me.
but there are other buildings.
Yeah, but Yep.
So maybe it's one of those things that we put out an RFP and have, because there's so many of those solar companies out there right now that are really doing amazing work.
yeah.
I know my partner's put solar panels on a couple of fire stations in Montgomery County, and there might be opportunities there.
Right. And then think of the fire stations. That's a great example. Is that something we could ask Honeywell to look into? Is this a legislative fix, or is this how do we?
No,
get there?
this is more putting something out for qualified companies to propose something. Let them evaluate the buildings.
So
I mean, something more Donovan Harold.
is that
you
in
know,
your bailiwick?
I can talk to Public Works about it.
Okay.
They're in charge of the facilities. Honeywell right now is going through and doing the energy efficiency upgrades that you approved in the CIP a year or so ago, a year or two ago. The HVAC systems, street lighting, which will be a big thing since we don't own the street lights, so that's a big project.
Great. Thanks for the updates.
So I want to talk just a little bit about the sea level rise project. There are a number of things that are sort of going on related to sea level rise. Some of them are education, and then there's the the mitigation measures that Public Works is working on. Public Works has a design to sort of shop around and get some feedback on. AECOM, who is one of the most prominent, engineering companies, has a couple of presentations coming up, and I'm not sure if you've gotten the dates on those, but you will. One's at Ward 1, and then another one's for the Downtown Annapolis Partnership, but we'll make sure that you get those so that they can walk through with folks what that entails. Parallel to that, there's a whole education effort that is going on related to hazard mitigation planning. All of those things are, again, sort of environmental things that cross city boundaries. And where I have my interest peaked is also that intersection of flooding and stormwater management. If I'm to spend any time in Eastport, almost every one of those street ends has the potential to serve and to mitigate us in both of those areas. So from my perspective, all of those things are things that need to be brought in a little more closely to the Office of Environmental Policy and make sure that whatever we're doing maybe includes folks from across the city, and it's my job to work with the departments to make sure that happens.
Do we need should we have a sea level czar, for lack of a better term, instead of
A resiliency officer?
yes?
Well, it's the Office of Environmental Policy. Yeah, I don't see a need
empowered?
for some other position. It's in my job description.
And so you're empowered to fix sea level rise?
I'm empowered to fix it, yes.
Rise, yeah. All right.
Can I interrupt for a second? Brian, did you need to be here at the table?
Mr. French has been shown that, you guys are free.
Right, Randy, so you need to set up a,
Yes, please.
so,
Go right ahead.
Good.
yeah, Marie, maybe you could, I don't know how much more we have to go, but maybe you could sit up here. Okay, great, thank you.
So,
No,
Yeah.
go right ahead.
so no, that responsibility is in my position.
So here's my next question then. It seems like there's meetings to discuss it, and by all means I might be missing it. So we have education that is coming, sea level rise is coming. We have education about certain things individual homeowner could do, lift your house, move. But how are we tackling this on a bigger scale?
That's what the mitigation planning is for, is to come up with something that gives you a long-term option for what you need to do for your, monthly flooding, your long-term flooding, and it's gonna be a citywide effort, not just downtown.
Yeah.
To implement that.
And it's also broader than sea level, but where we're advanced more than other jurisdictions is that we've melded it with the FEMA guidelines, and I think we're in phase 4 now
I think so.
of filling out the plan. It has to be accepted by FEMA, and as I say, it does more than, but we are the ones that are in the vanguard of adding sea level rise to storms and fire and so forth. And we have a weather together meeting next week, I think.
I think so. I know there was
So
one that
there's-
got rearranged. There's one
Every
at
month
the,
there are workshops.
there's one at the former Marriott, whatever that waterfront
Right.
hotel or
And we're
something.
having a big conference in the fall that people from all over the country and actually people from other countries are coming to that. So it'll be a presentation, but we're not quite to the point where we have something that we can affix dollars to, and I think that's when we'll turn the corner and really be serious about it.
When will we get to that point?
I think the plan is to have the hazard mitigation work done this year, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's, I mean, it's a topic that is easy to shove off because it feels like it's down the road, but it really isn't.
No, I agree. That's what I wanted.
And I asked John Hammond this morning when he was presenting the county budget, and he was doing his capital program. I said, I don't see anything there in your budget for sea level rise. And he said, well, Alderman Arnett, that's because we haven't stooped to the city's lows.
Thanks, John.
Actually, someone from the county was talking today at the chamber breakfast this morning about the possibility of taking the cleaned water from the wastewater plants and actually injecting it back into the ground again. Because part of our issue here is not only the sea level rising, but the land sinking.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, and part of the sinking feeling is from us taking the water out of the aquifer faster than it's recharging. And,
Yes,
you
and
know,
that
so
was discussed because the county, I don't think understands, they're in much worse shape than we are because in Edgewater, they depend a lot on septic and shallow well water, and that's gonna be infiltrated.
they're not going to be able to work, right? Yeah,
So
no, they're going to be
it's-
flooded, right?
They have somewhat of a head in the sands view of this, but I think they'll get a rude awakening. But I wanna get to all the money pots before they do.
Yeah. Rory, anything we can do to help you with this?
I will let you know.
Okay. We are certainly interested in helping.
Yes.
All right, anything else?
No.
Anything else?
Nope.
Chair, we move.
I move we adjourn.
Second, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
We're close.